Major contributions to programming seen on WHRO are made by the Virginian-Pilot and the Ledger-Star, which urges you to also support Channel 15. For total coverage of news, sports, and entertainment in Hampton Roads, we don't miss a beat.
Coming up on the Hampton Roads art scene, become good friends with great literature. Join the Great Books discussion group as they meet to discuss and enjoy the classics twice each month, beginning September 12th at the Kempsville Area Library. Now is your last chance to see the major exhibit of selected sculptures by Anna Hyatt Huntington that has been on display throughout the summer at the Mariners Museum. The exhibit closes September 16th. For music lovers, the Virginia Pops is sponsoring a Free-for-All in the Fall series of 6 outdoor concerts that are free and open to the public. The next 2 concerts are September 13th at 7 p.m. in Mill Point Park, Hampton, and September 15th at 4 p.m. at the Waterside Amphitheater. 7 area artists are being featured this month in Winners of the 1985 Members Show, an exhibition of award-winning art on display now through September 22nd at the Virginia Beach Arts Center. Register now for Art Studio, a series of art courses being offered through the Virginia Beach Arts Center for both the novice and the experienced artisan. Classes begin the week of September 23rd and are offered on a first-come, first-served basis. For more information concerning arts events, call WHRO at 489-9484. This has been the Arts Calendar presented by WHRO TV.
Coming up, Lyric Opera of Chicago's stunning production of Tchaikovsky's Eugene Onegin. Leading the international cast of this American television premiere are Mirella Freni as Tatiana and Wolfgang Brendel as Onegin. Generally considered to be Tchaikovsky's greatest opera, it is set in the genteel and frivolous world of 19th century Tsarist Russia. Join us for Lyric Opera of Chicago's production of Eugene Onegin.
Join us for this special stereo simulcast with WHRO FM. WHRO TV, Hampton, Norfolk. Presentation of the Nightly Business Report on Channel 15 is made possible by Norfolk Southern Corporation, the thoroughbred of transportation, and Pete Marwick, a CPA firm committed to excellence in serving the growing Hampton Roads economy.
This is the Nightly Business Report, brought to you by Digital Equipment Corporation and the newest member of the VAX family, MicroVax 2. Now every user, project team, and department can afford the power of a VAX. By Dean Winter. Our full range of financial services can help you build a more solid financial future. Dean Winter, a member of the Sears Financial Network. Also by Pacific Telesis Group, including the Pactel Mobile Companies, the nation's fastest-growing cellular communications network, and public television stations across the nation.
Good evening, everyone. After holding steady for 6 months, the nation's civilian unemployment rate took a turn for the better in August, dropping 0.3% to a flat 7%. That's the lowest unemployment rate since President Reagan took office. Although black and Hispanic workers both registered substantial declines in unemployment during the month, by far the best improvement came in the ranks of teenagers generally and black teens in particular. New York correspondent Neil Cavuto reports.
Economists attribute virtually all of last month's decline in unemployment to a big drop in teenage and young adult unemployment. Morgan Guaranty Trust Edward McKelvey says many young workers found jobs in the particularly wide-open retail and service sectors.
I think that we're going to continue to see fairly solid gains in the service and retail sectors of the economy. We have always seen that. It's a very stable part of the employment report, certainly in this report that we got today.
But not everyone is convinced the 7% unemployment rate tells the entire story. Frank Slovig of the Full Employment Action Council, a coalition of various unions and trade groups, argues the latest unemployment numbers ignore more gnawing problems on the economy.
That we have a pattern of real joblessness, real job deficit that really is substantially higher than the official unemployment rate figures would reflect.
Many economists also worry that September's unemployment number could in fact rise again, reflecting students leaving the workforce and returning to school. Despite the seasonal adjustments for this factor, economists say overall employment gains for the month will be down. Nevertheless, Baskin-Robbins franchisee owner Charles Paul says he isn't worried, that business still looks good, and he'll continue to hire people to fill the slack.
Obviously, when you have 3 people available to work in a day shift, and all 3 of them normally go to high school, if you're not prepared, you're going to be in trouble. We anticipate this type of thing, and one of the things that many of the store owners do, we have discussions about this in meetings and how to handle these kinds of situations, so we are prepared.
As optimistic as many store owners and economists are that unemployment will probably continue to go down in the months ahead, they have based much of that optimism on continued strength in the economy through the second half. And many economists are very worried whether that second half resurgence will continue. If it does, they can see unemployment going down another 0.5% to a full percent. If it doesn't, it could probably eke up by at least that amount by the end of the year. In New York, Neil Kavuta for the Nightly Business Report.
President Reagan called the unemployment news exciting and said the decline to 7% joblessness is proof that the economy is packing new power. The president also pointed out that the number of Americans holding jobs is at an all-time high. The Labor Department says the economy created 310,000 jobs last month, bringing total employment to more than 107 million. Paul?
With many of Wall Street's money managers sitting on the sidelines waiting for some clear-cut clue as to where the economy is heading, the stock market moved lower for the 4th consecutive session yesterday as the Dow Industrial Average fell nearly 1 point, making it a net loser of 8.18 for the week going into today's session. But alas, this morning, New York Exchange stocks staged one of the best opening rallies in quite a while, drawing strength from the report that August unemployment fell a decisive 0.3% to 7%. Even though much of the drop appeared to be due to a statistical quirk, it was enough to get Wall Street's very hungry bulls on the move. Since by 11 a.m., the industrial average rose just over 6 points, with 6 stocks up for every 5 down. Last night's report of a $2.4 billion rise in the basic money supply gave buyers some cause to pause during mid-session, but persistent strength in bellwether issues like General Motors and IBM was impressive and helped the market hold on to most of its early gains. At 1 p.m., the industrial average was still up almost 6 points, with gainers leading losers 7-6. The market gradually developed a stronger undertone in mid-afternoon, aided in part by President Reagan's chief economic advisor, Beryl Sprinkle, who said new evidence indicates the economy will grow at a strong 5% rate in this year's second half. By 3 p.m. then, the industrial average was sporting better than a 10.25 point gain, with 8 stocks up for every 6 down. In the final hour, normal pre-weekend selling pressures blunted the rally, but the Dow Industrial Average still managed to hold on to a respectable closing gain of 9.86 at 1335.69, and for the 4-day week overall, it rose 1.68. The intraday high just above 1341, the low just below 1324. Trading volume, 95 million shares. Dow Transport's rebounding nicely with the airlines coming back, a 5-point gain there. Utilities, however, down 0.21. Dow 65 up 3.36. Standard & Poor's 500 gained nearly a point and better than point-size gains in the S&P 400 and 100. November 180 OAX option gained 5/8 of a point. New York Stock Exchange Index up exactly a half point. Value line up nearly that much. And the Wilshire 5000 was up 8.808. I'll be back shortly to show you where the action was in today's market.
On the precious metals markets today, in London, gold fell $5.50, closing at $320.25. But in New York, gold rose 50 cents to $321 even, and silver closed up 7 cents at $6.13 the ounce. On the world money markets, the dollar moved ahead sharply on news of a drop in the U.S. unemployment rate, finishing higher against the mark, yen, Swiss franc, and British pound. President Reagan today declared that overhaul of the federal tax code is the most burning issue facing Americans in this decade. The president made those remarks in a speech at the White House to Republican women state legislators, and he added that he plans to be out on the stump all fall to rally support behind his tax proposals. Apparently backing the president's drive for tax reform this year is House Ways and Means Committee Chairman Dan Rostenkowski, as Scott Gervey of our Chicago Bureau reports.
The chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, on the eve of his meeting to discuss tax reform with administration leaders, would not commit to a specific timetable for reporting a bill out of committee.
I feel an obligation to my colleagues in the House to bring a bill up before the conclusion of this session. I would like to do that sometime in October, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I'm holding to any date certain. I don't know how long the markup will take.
Rostenkowski gave the keynote address at the second annual Small Business Expo, which he sponsored along with the Chicago Association of Commerce and Industry.
Last year was the first time that I know of that any member of Congress had done a program like this, specifically targeted for small business, specifically designed to get small business aware of how to deal with the government and aware of really the rules of the road.
At a time when critics of Reagan administration policy point to what they call a laissez-faire attitude toward small business, Rostenkowski made political points by bringing government procurement agents to meet the businessmen.
I like the idea of the enthusiasm that small business brings to the product in the forefront, and we do everything we can to encourage people to bid.
While the congressman was a hit for co-sponsoring the expo, he was not a hit when he predicted a tax increase ahead.
Someday, we're going to have to cut more spending and raise more taxes. The president has no other practical alternative.
Rostenkowski says the tax bill his committee writes in the next few weeks will not be anti-business, but he admits big businesses will be paying more under almost any tax reform plan. In Chicago, Scott Gervey for the Nightly Business Report.
Community Savings and Loan of Bethesda, Maryland is the latest Maryland S&L to be placed under state control, resulting in a 90-day freeze on deposits and withdrawals. The Maryland Deposit Insurance Fund says it took over Community Savings to protect its depositors after it determined the institution would probably fail to qualify for federal insurance by year-end. The Federal Home Loan Bank Board says it will not insure Community until the S&L sells off its financially troubled Epic real estate subsidiary.
Incidentally, Linda, that Epic subsidiary reportedly late today filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Well, things weren't so bad on Wall Street today. Let's have a look at the closing averages, and we see a lot of plus signs for a change. Dow Industrial's up nearly 10 points, up 1.68 for the week overall. Transport's making a good comeback with the airline spearheading that rally, up 5.03. The utility's the only loser here, down 0.21. Fractional gains and all the other broadly based indexes at the bottom of your screen. Trading volume up 500,000 shares from yesterday's pace, and up volume was almost twice as much as down volume. 873 issues closed higher, 623 lower, 31 new highs for the year, and 26 new lows. That's still a rather large number of new lows. Topping the active list on 1.8 million shares, Beatrice Companies, gaining 5/8. Analysts noted that the activity is probably due to a dividend arbitrage. The stock goes ex-dividend September 13th. Revlon down 7/8. Chemical New York edged up 1/8. Unical off 3/4. And then Richardson Vicks up 3.5 points on rumors all over the street that Unilever might be interested in making a buyout bid. No comment from either company. General Development went public today. City Investing sold the stock, and it was unchanged at 13 3/8 on the close. Kansas Gas and Electric edged up 1/8. Iowa Electric down 1/8. Oak Industries, this is the third straight day it's been in the active list, no change. Union Carbide up 1 3/8, and the chances are that the company today began its stock buyback program, said it's going to buy 10 million shares. Among widely held issues, American Express moved up 1 1/4, but Coca-Cola kind of fizzled out down 1 3/8. Late today, an analyst at Montgomery Securities lowered his earnings estimates for Coke for 85 and 86. He did say, however, on any sharp near-term weakness, the stock should be bought. Exxon gained 3/8, and General Motors doing very well, up 1 7/8. Of course, the company reported late August sales were up 74%. IBM participating in the rally, up 7/8. Ralston Purina dropped only 1/8, despite some very negative comments about it in the Heard on the Street column in today's Wall Street Journal. UAL, parent company of United Airlines, moved up 1 1/4, rebounding from a similar loss yesterday when Goldman Sachs dropped it from its buy list. MCA Incorporated, the big point mover, up 6 5/8. Rumors all over that Steven Spielberg, the movie producer, wants to buy the company's studios and that RCA wants to buy the rest of the assets. But a Dean Witter analyst said he doubts that because the company just completed a major debt offering, and on Monday, a 3-for-2 split takes place. Cullinet Software was up 1 5/8. Company officials couldn't explain the strength. Same story with Diebold, up 2 5/8 today. J.M. Smucker gained 2 3/4. The Value Line survey recently upgraded its opinion of Smucker. On the downside, South down, losing 1 1/8. The stock rose 5 points on Wednesday when it announced that it's retained Goldman Sachs to advise it on financial opportunities. Down a little bit on profit-taking today, I guess. And Unilever, rumored to be a suitor for Richardson Vicks, down 1 3/8 on that news. Over the American exchange, the smallest of possible losses in the index, off 0.01. Trading volume, nearly 1 million shares more than yesterday, and about 60 more issues up than down. Western Digital topped the active list on 1.2 million shares. The stock losing a point after the market market closed yesterday, Western Digital said it'll have a fourth quarter loss. Gulf Canada showed no change. Wang Labs edged a quarter, and so did Texas Air. BAT Industries, fifth in Amex volume, showed no change. Maine Public Service up 2 points on persistent rumors that Central Maine Power is still interested in acquiring that company. Rogers Corp, which dropped nearly 2 points yesterday when the company told shareholders it'll have a third quarter loss, off another point today. In NASDAQ trading, the composite index up 0.91. For the week overall, it gained 1.52. Trading volume today, 1 million shares below yesterday's pace, and about 77 more issues up than down in NASDAQ trading. Topping the active list was Multimedia, losing 1/2, followed by Rouse Company, up 1/8. Lifomed, and I'm pronouncing it right this thanks to several viewers that phoned in. Lifomed up 3/8. The company did have a 1.6 million share offering today, priced at 22.5, so the stock edged above that. Lotus Development down 1 point. Intel gained 3/4, fifth in volume. Intergraph was up 3/4. Siemens, no change. Price Company edged up 1/8, while Safeco lost 1/8, and Zenith Labs 10th in NASDAQ volume, down 1.5. Highland Superstores rose 1 1/8 after the company said today its August sales were up 77%. Patrick Industries lost 1 1/4. The company's tender offer for 850,000 shares was heavily oversubscribed, about 1.4 million tendered. And United Bancorp Arizona down 1 point. The company has agreed to be bought out at $33 a share by Union Bancorp, but some shareholders felt that a better price could have been obtained. And finally, Chubb Corporation in the spotlight. The company today declared a 3-for-2 split and a boost in the dividend. Well, the government bond market in particular sold off sharply this morning on the report that August unemployment fell to a flat 7%. Some long-term issues dropped over $20 for every $1,000 of face value, although a few prices recovered slightly in late afternoon. Beryl Sprinkle's prediction of a 5% economic growth rate for the second half of the year kept the market broadly lower. Looking at the long-term governments, boy, look at that loss, 2 3/30, no recovery there. And we see a 1/4 point drop in the American telephone corporates. Dow Jones 20 Corporate Bond Index off 0.21. The Southern California Municipals off a 1/2 point at 96.5 bid. And Fed funds still hovering just above 7.5%. That's our Wall Street wrap-up. Dean?
Thanks, Paul. Wild cheers and applause rumbled through a Toronto hotel today as 135,000 Canadian auto workers officially broke their 50-year-old tie to the Detroit-based United Auto Workers Union. Friction with the UAW has been building on the Canadian side of the border for years, coming to a head last year when the Canadians claimed the Detroit leadership interfered with a 13-day strike against GM Canada. The man who led the campaign for independence, Robert White, was today elected president of the new UAW Canada. UAW President Owen Bieber, conspicuously absent from the Canadian convention, told White in a telegram the decision to leave the UAW was wrong, but that the Detroit union will remain an ally. The split will cost the Detroit organization some $15 million a year in Canadian dues. Coming up, tonight's guest market monitor, James B. Stack, editor and publisher of the InvestTech Market Letter.
Senate Republican leader Robert Dole is warning the Reagan administration and foreign nations that Congress will soon take action to protect U.S. industries from unfair trade practices. Dole said while he can understand President Reagan's rejection of knee-jerk protectionism as a solution to the nation's trade crisis, members of Congress believe the United States must respond to basic unfairness. As Dole put it, the United States cannot be the world's only free trader.
Two leading U.S. and Japanese electronics trade groups are forming a committee to help boost Japan's imports of U.S.-made electronics products. The move follows 2 days of talks in Tokyo between Stephen Levy, chairman of the American Electronics Association, and his Japanese counterpart, Sony chairman Akio Morita. Levy called those talks fruitful and said they may help to reduce trade friction between the two countries.
One of this nation's largest recipients of foreign aid, Israel, today picked up a check in Washington for $750 million in emergency assistance. Israel's finance minister, Yitzhak Modai, says the extra money will help his nation devote more of its resources to its severe financial problems.
We have received supplemental aid of $1.5 billion, half of which is reimbursed today. Part of it will be sometime next year, and that's about it. All the rest is the regular USA aid in defense, and as I said, part of it is defined as economic aid, but what it really serves to is to pay back debt services that stem from defense loans in the past.
Modai said he is not seeking additional economic aid for his nation at this time, although he left the door open to possible requests for increased military aid.
My guest market monitor this week is Mr. James B. Stack, the editor and publisher of the InvestTech Market Letter based in Kalispell, Montana. But Jim is right here with our studios this evening, and welcome back to the Nightly Business Report, Jim.
Thank you, Paul. It's nice to be here.
Your last visit with us was on January 4th of this year. The Dow stood at 1184.96. There was a lot of bearishness around the street because the market had started the year off in a bad way. You said ignore the bearishness. This is the time to be buying stocks. And subsequently, the Dow Industrial Average rose 174 points to a July 19th high at 1359. You gave us 5 stocks at that time to buy. Payne Weber, Jackson, Quick & Riley, and the brokerage stocks did very well there for a while. Comprehensive Care, TGI Friday, and Decision Data. At the time you recommended selling them, it came out with a 23% profit. But the highs would have given you a 52% profit. And all the highs occurred before you sold them. Did you get a little greedy?
Well, those were certainly market leaders, Paul, and they tended to top out ahead of the market. We got them a little bit later than we would have liked to, but all of the stocks except for one are lower now than where we exited them, so I can't feel too bad.
Who can complain on 23% profit? As a matter of fact, all of your recommendations, not just these 5 stocks you gave us, but all of your recommendations since then, you're up 32% on the year, and this makes you the 6th best investment advisor in the country according to the Hulbert Rating Service, which you don't necessarily agree with, but 32% overall is very good.
Yes, on the average portfolio, I guess.
Now, 2 weeks after the July 19th high, you started getting very cautious. You are now 86% in cash and only 14% on the market. You call us at a critical juncture now. What does that mean?
In July, we began seeing a deterioration in both monetary and technical indicators. For example, it hinted at a possibility of a bear market before year end. For example, our monetary exposure profile, which is our monetary model, had dropped from an adamantly bullish reading last December to where it was one step away from a sell signal, the first sell signal since June of 1983, just before the high-tech bubble burst.
So we're talking about interest rates here.
Yes, we're talking about the Federal Reserve pressures.
What do you think? Rates going up or down?
The Federal Reserve is faced with a no-win situation. On one hand, they have deflationary forces, which we haven't seen in 50 years.
Right.
And on the other hand, they have an out-of-control money supply and high consumer debt. Up until now, the Federal Reserve has been dealing with it on a month-to-month basis, looking at the economy, not looking at interest rates or money supply. In essence, it's like riding a horse by holding onto the tail instead of the reins.
What's your gut feeling? Do you think that they're going to tighten?
With the recent economic statistics, I think the Federal Reserve is breathing easier. That means they're going to slow M1 growth probably to a 5% rate through year end. That'll still leave it well above target. But one econometric model we have shows that even if they bring it down to a 5% rate, there's over an 80% probability that stock prices will be lower by year end.
Okay, so what do we do? Do we sell short or sell major positions we own? What parts of the market are most vulnerable at this stage?
Well, Paul, it's somewhat like an old Kenny Rogers song called The Gambler. It's nice to be in the charging bull market, riding it upward, but more important is knowing when to step out of the game, when to stand on the sidelines.
Okay.
Right now, it's important to have a defensive position and know which stock groups are most vulnerable.
And they are?
These would include probably the stock groups where expectations are highest, because high expectations leave a lot of room for big disappointment, such as the publishing, the broadcasting, toys, apparel stocks, insurance groups. Those are.
So you're not buying anything right now?
No, we're staying on the sidelines. If we get confirmation of a bear market, then we will establish short positions.
Okay, what about gold and silver? Buy or sell?
The precious metals, for the most part, have lost their luster. With the Federal Reserve leaning toward a tighter side, I think gold's going to be in a lackluster. I don't think has any place in the portfolio except for inflation insurance, no more than 10%.
Okay, and so just stand pat. You're very cautious at the moment.
Be prepared for a bear market.
Okay.
That's the best.
Very good. Thanks, Jim, for being with us.
Thank you.
My very cautious market monitor this week, Mr. James B. Stack of the InvestTech Market Letter.
The White House says President Reagan still opposes the idea of imposing economic sanctions against South Africa. White House spokesman Larry Speaks said the president still favors the policy of constructive engagement with South Africa, but has not yet decided whether to veto economic sanctions should Congress pass them. Republican congressional leaders have warned the president that Congress has the votes needed to override such a veto.
Meanwhile, South Africa's battered currency, the rand, slipped again on the world currency markets today. At the close of trading today, the rand was worth 39 U.S. cents, down 2 cents from yesterday's close. The rand's difficulties reflect continuing concern over the racial turmoil rocking South Africa. Currency market observers attribute the rand's decline today to the South African central bank's halting of measures that have kept the rand's value artificially high. In tonight's commentary, Brookings Institution's senior fellow and former presidential advisor Charles Schulz contends the U.S. economy is still competitive despite the record strength of the dollar.
Some time ago on Nightly Business Report, I said that if we could only solve the problem of the federal budget deficit, there were several reasons to be optimistic about our country's economic prospects. At that time, I talked about one of those reasons: the probability that in the next 10 years, inflationary pressures will be much less than they were in the 1970s. But there's another reason to be optimistic. Underneath the tremendous difficulties created for American industry by the massive overvaluation of the U.S. dollar in foreign exchange markets, our economy remains fundamentally dynamic, vigorous, and competitive, especially when compared to the major countries of Europe. In the last 15 years, America created some 28 million new jobs. Europe, virtually none. American workers are more mobile than their European counterparts. And the American labor force adapts more readily to changes in markets and technology. More so than in Europe, the American workforce has shifted its composition towards the high-tech and other rapidly growing industries. In recent years, American management seems to have been somewhat quicker than its European counterparts in adapting the new technologies. For example, relative to the size of our GNPs, the market for the new information technologies is estimated to be about twice as large in the United States as it is in Europe. The American entrepreneurial spirit remains strong, and new, small, innovative firms specializing in high technologies can get risk capital. Right now, the gross overvaluation of the dollar is severely penalizing American exports of manufactured goods, as well as of other kinds. But if we can only find the will to put our fiscal house in order, and so help bring the exchange value of the dollar back to a more normal level, then American industry, along with the Japanese, will be at the forefront of economic and technological advance. This is Charles Schulz.
Recapping tonight's top stories, unemployment moves down by a big 0.3% in August to a flat 7%. But analysts are divided as to whether the move signals a reviving economy or a statistical quirk.
Wall Street responds strongly to that good unemployment news as the Dow Jones Industrial Average closes up almost 10 points at 1335.69. Looking ahead to Monday, Federal Reserve Board Chairman Paul Volcker gives his views on the world economy to some of the nation's governors. And now with tonight's last word, here's Paul.
As we noted earlier, today's drop in the unemployment rate to a flat 7% is being greeted as good news most everywhere. But we imagine that among the most relieved are the folks at the Bureau of Labor Statistics who put out the unemployment numbers. After all, just think of what it must have been like to spend 6 straight months compiling unemployment data and reporting absolutely no change. Boy, I hope that never happens to the stock market. It'll all be part of the unemployment statistics.
That's it for this edition of the Nightly Business Report for Friday, September 6th.
For Linda, for Paul, and for all of us on the Nightly Business Report, good night.
The Nightly Business Report is brought to you by Pacific Telesis Group, including the Pactel Mobile Companies, the nation's fastest growing cellular communications network. By Dean Witter. Let us answer questions about your investment needs. Talk to an account executive at any of our 650 locations. Dean Witter, a member of the Sears Financial Network. Also by Digital Equipment Corporation and the newest member of the VAX family, MicroVax 2. Now every user, project team, and department can afford the power of a VAX. And public television stations across the nation. For a transcript of tonight's program, please send $3, check or money order, to NBR Transcripts, P.O. Box 12724, Overland Park, Kansas 66212. Please include the date of the broadcast.